Hey Jay, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me today. I've been looking forward to this.
My pleasure, especially when finally in take number 17 we managed to pass the hi Jay, how are you doing? I love it. It's like it's my decrement.
The things that the users at home just don't know.
I know. You know, it took us like 30 minutes just to set up the lighting. You have great background at your home. Mine is like all asymmetric and I have light from here and there and it's like such a bad hair day. It's like amazing, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I changed sweaters because I thought my old one made it washed out, and I've been sitting here thinking, now the new one might. It's really amazing the thought that goes into this.
I know, and I love the fact that your background is symmetric. It's such a zoom thing. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's my fake background that just happens to be real.
That's great. Well, it's a I would say this is a Christmas special. As you can see, I wore my special Christmas T-shirt.
I
So
did not
Merry
wear my
Christmas.
onesie. Yeah, I did not. I'm sorry that I was not ready to go all in.
You have a onesie, a Christmas onesie, or a Hanukkah onesie?
A Hanukkah onesie.
That's a Chag Sameach. Yeah. So, you know, one of the things that I saw recently, I did a little bit of, let's call it research. I looked in your LinkedIn profile, and I realized that we have about 800. Actually, I wrote it down. Let me check.
I'm
Eight.
actually really interested.
Yeah, we have only 813 mutual connections, and I was surprised. So of course I went to to check my connections to Matteo Carbone because he indexed everyone in the insurance industry, and with him I have only 1,593. By the way, with Caribou I have 1,323. I just had to check.
So I really have to figure out like what I'm missing here. I got to get on this. I got to go. I guess I have to hunt down, sort of like your LinkedIn and figure out like what am I missing so that I can catch up.
No, I think
Um,
you should do with Caribou. It's like it's a question, but apparently we are connected in one or the other way.
yes, I do like how we're judging the quality of our relationship based on the mutual number of LinkedIn connections.
Of
Absolutely.
course,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not the fact that every time that I visit New York, you offer me a place in your office, which thank you very much. You have no idea how many times it saved me, especially with sitting meetings. And you know, it's a great tradition, I would say.
It is, especially because you come and you bring, from Bread's Bakery, you bring the babka, this chocolate babka. Who isn't going to want to invite you back? I mean, the hardest part is that you've spoiled us. Yes, not many podcasts or videocasts, or I don't even know what these are called, that we
I have
can
no
talk
idea.
about babka and love handles, but it is the holidays. It's not a completely off topic, I guess.
Yeah. The main reason I really like bread, so originally it's an Israeli bakery, and that's where I go to for in New York for the best, rogalach and sandwiches that go like, oh my God, this is the same bakery that I had like 1 minute walk from my apartment in Tel Aviv. But, well, we're talking about what, 12 years ago? Oh my God, time passes so fast. So for the people who don't know you, which is will be super surprised, you are, I would say, the man that got turned InsurTech to be sexy or made InsurTech a thing. Is that would that be right?
I mean, it sounds like a compliment, so I don't think I'm
It
going to
is.
say,
It is. Most definitely, it is.
I don't think I'm going to say no to that. I'll say probably when people describe us, and to your point, so I'm the co-founder and CEO of InsurTech Connect, and most people do know us for the annual event that we launched in 2016, and then 4 years later had 7,000 people from over 60 countries. But I would say that what we get super excited about are, and we talked about it in a joking way, but it's the connections, and it's the fact that people can leave inspired. They can leave, and you've talked about this term before around innovation tourism. The one thing we don't want is innovation tourism. Oh, that's cute. What you want is connections that move the needle and ultimately impact policyholders' lives. And that is probably what I'm most proud of, is that we can point to some of those where A and B met, great things happened, and now the policyholders, are happy, and you even see it on commercials. Like people are, I don't, maybe excited is a strong word, but they think about insurance and
Mhm.
insurance companies differently.
So how did you come up with the ITC?
Well, it's one of my favorite questions, and I think I like it so much because the ending is happy, right? I don't know if the ending hadn't been happy, I don't know if I'd really love talking about it. But it is. I have to give as much credit as I can to my partner Caribou, Honig, with whom you clearly have 700, or is it 200, 400, some amount more
Yeah, whatever.
connections. But and so in 2015, he was, I'd say, early. He had founded and been a founding partner of a great VC fund, QED Investors, and they're really well known for their fintech prowess. So he had started to be early in this InsurTech thing, InsurTech, insurance tech, and he was looking for a show to go to, right? Because shows happen to be great places to figure out what's going on, who to meet, catch up. He couldn't find one. So he was turned to his colleague and was like, "Do you think we should start a show?" The colleague kind of said, "I don't know that that's actually something that we, should do, but I happen to know a guy." And so I happen to be that guy that he knew. And so at the same time, as I make my favorite question a very long answer here, I will say that I had been in the event world of launching events and bringing people together. And that for me started in 2008.
Was
And
that the LeadsCon?
yes, yes. So it was LeadsCon. It was internet advertising, really around the world of customer acquisition and lead gen. And no surprise to you, since you happen to be an insurance guy and an entrepreneur, the internet was a very big place for companies in insurance to try to find new customers. And so we had insurance people, executives, but really more agency owners would show up.
Mm.
And I was sort of like, what are you doing here? And those conversations led to a fascination with insurance and a desire to create a show for the insurance industry. And so that desire, with Caribou saying, I think this is the right moment, and I have an idea that I think you might like, led us to launch ITC.
I love it. I love it because you see that development, especially from the leads that everyone. And first of all, thank you very much for calling me an insurance guy. I've been a tech guy, all kinds of other guys, but it's funny that in the past 6 years, I matured into an insurance guy.
Well, I asked myself before I said, I'm like, I hope he sees it as a compliment, because I do
Oh,
mean
it is. It is. Especially now, it's like it takes time to get those scars of respect. It's not straightforward. How else, the InsurTech or the insurance industry evolved in the past 5 years? That 5? Yeah, 5 years that you've been running ITC.
Oh man, how much time do we have, right?
As much as you want.
Yeah. Well, I'll think of others, sort of in mind here. And for me, I think the journey was a fascinating one because my initial introduction was very much more around agents, more around how do you help people as consumer behavior turning online was shifting. Obviously, how do you help people who are used to offline get to have more customers? And so that customer acquisition lens, still very helpful today, but it meant that my eyes were just sort of like so opened on the process to come to InsurTech Connect because, customer acquisition is not what InsurTech Connect is about, right? It's the entire value chain. And it's also something that makes insurance so amazing because whether you pick any part of the value chain, there's something big and meaty and complex. And, and so part of, I think, the appeal is that you can pick so many different spots to want to try to tackle. Clearly claims is one where, it's so obvious because when we say obvious, it's what you oftentimes will hear about on like commercials. It's the thing that people understand. They don't really understand risk selection, even though selection is a very big part of the insurance piece. But so take new product development, new geography expansion. How do we get a product to market faster? the strategic investing side, should we even have it? What does innovation look like internally? Is so many big questions that are able to be addressed and tackled. And at the end of the day, each one, adds value to creating a better business and a better, offering for our policyholders.
Now I need to look as if I'm reading from my notes because I'm a lefty. I have a very bad handwrite. So let me for a quick. So basically 2020. It's, yeah, this is a Christmas special. We are almost a week to end 2020, to enter 2021.
Yes.
So how was 2020 for you? Because
Oh,
it's impacted everyone. Now, a full disclosure, I had the honor and the privilege to produce ITC India World Tour here in Southern California. So that was a great opportunity. But I already gave a glimpse to the answer. But please, how was 2020?
well, let's just say I think it's nice when one thing most people agree on is they're happy that if 2020 is over and if it doesn't quite return. As people who look forward to getting together and, to celebrate an industry, not getting to do so in person was crushing, absolutely crushing. And it sucked. It really did. I think what's so nice is you have a choice. We can sit, curl up in a ball, which I think we did for a little bit. Or, right, you can start looking for the positive and you can start looking for where's the opportunity. On the positives, insurance industry, like it was validated that insurance is a great place to be, that the move to digital was accelerated. So InsurTech in some ways is validated. All of these are very encouraging. And then as a company and as a team, we tried to say, what can we do to continue that mission of connecting, continue shining a spotlight on what the people are doing, and what can we do that's different and new? And absolutely, you were a key part of one of those, which was the world tour. We thought, if we can't bring people to Vegas, let's bring people to the world. So it was 35 stops across the US and the globally. And I thought it was just a huge success because it was truly a chance to show this, that it is both local and global and a movement. So thank you for helping and be a part of that.
Yeah, thank you. I think, and a lot of, I would say, credit to all the team that works with you. I think that I saw how things are going to be in the backstage and how much work people put in, things moving and changing all the time. I don't know if Samara even slept during August, September. I have no idea if that even happened. It was great to see that happening and see an organization going like, holy shit, the entire industry just collapsed. How do we make it happen and evolve and innovate to keep things working and, making, ITC is ITC, which is, at the end of the day, in my opinion, it was great. Yeah, we had great content, great conversations, but enough good things for you. It's too much. Let's talk about, so now that
you're really talking about our team and how great they are. So never too much. The team
right.
can never get enough compliments and praise. So I will say thank you on their behalf.
In that case, sure, I can continue. But moving, so like anything else, there is a tail, which means that 2020 actually is going to finish at the end of Q1 or somewhere in the middle of Q2 of 2021 until most people will get the vaccines, and then we'll see other effects. What are your predictions for 2021 or wishful thinkings?
Oh, well, wishful thinking is always great. Wishful thinking says that we'll see everyone again October 4th, sort of in Vegas. It's certainly our hope and our wishful thinking. When we look back to last year, I think one thing that may make sense in hindsight, but it's not something that we would have predicted, is just, I think the separation between, separation, speaking of the, InsurTechs, the tech companies, we saw it in the stock market, how well Amazon or, did and others. But I was not thinking about the same where the digital pure plays would continue to grow at the pace that they did. And, I don't think I ever expected we'd have the IPO activity. And, I think it's both interesting, but I'm going to monitor it, which is all of these big companies started small at some point. And, what I really care about, among other things, is that innovation has a chance, so that next idea that could become the next hippo, is able to get the traction and the market reception. And so while I am both ecstatic to see the validation and continued success of some of those, now almost household names, I do want to make sure that the idea, sort of generation and the seedlings can still get enough sunlight to grow.
So that's your prediction for the industry. How about let's talk about ITC. Predictions, we are all going to meet October 4th in Vegas. Are we changing a venue? Or are we still in the MGM?
We're going from the MGM to the Mandalay Bay.
Okay. And now, originally we started in Caesars.
Oh, that was actually year 2.
That's year 2, right.
Convention Center 2016, Caesars 2017, MGM and MGM. And then all online, of course, for edition 5.
Yeah, no, that's good. I remember last year, basically in the MGM, just walking between the layouts. I think that every day I counted 20,000 steps. Not I counted, my iPhone and my Oura Ring counted it for me. But it was funny that with all the exhaustions and everything and the conference food, we actually lost weight, which was a different scenario. But thank you for keeping us in shape. Once again, I need to check my notes here.
When people say, why does this have to be so far away from this? I think my answer will be, you'll thank me. You can eat better at night and you'll feel good about it.
So here is a question that usually that people ask. Where is business done during ITC? The last year, there were so many levels and rooms. So where, from a conference organizer, that everything is timing and making sure that the next content and the next show, where is the business? Where is it there?
Yeah, again, I think that's a awesome thing to try to think through. And it's something that, wow, a simple answer would be everywhere. I would say the slightly more detailed answer is that is one of the things that made us even stronger believers of the value of face-to-face. I'm so proud of what our team did in terms of, world tour. We also had 12,000 people register for ITC Global. And so, thousands of one-on-one meetings that still took place. And yet, in that whole process, we said, almost like there is no real substitute for getting together. And part of it is, even here, even like with us, we see the top half of each other. What we don't get to do is we don't get to stand there. We don't get to see mutual friends walk by and say, hey, what you don't get is that accidental invite to the dinner. You don't get to sit down, for those that like to gamble, and sit down at the craps table or whatever table and be like, oh, hey. So the fact that there are both you can meet someone for the first time at a booth or sitting next to them. You can, sort of, it's like nurturing of the complexity of relationships. And that's what's so fun in a way, is just how many places that you can do it. So it's answering more specifically, I think, to Drew Aldrich, our mutual friend, great guy, AmFam Ventures. And I said, Drew, how much time did you spend on our digital event? And he's like, I don't really want to answer you there. And he said, because the reason is that for me, like when he goes to ITC, and you hear this quite a bit, he's like, it's a chance for you to meet my portfolio companies. It's a chance for me to meet other members of the AmFam organization. It's a chance for me to meet other AmFam Ventures people that I don't get to see often. I get to see my other VCs. And all of this, not yet once is he talking about meeting new, sort of like startups. Mm-hmm. And the thought process that goes, last year they had their president's meeting at our event. So that top 75 people from AmFam come to ITC. They have, both their own meeting, and interwoven in that experience is their ITC experience. But it was both guided towards the expo hall. It was time together. It was, we also have to have dinner together to decompress. So as you think about it, there's like a variety of ways to sort of, you take it in, you meet, you sit down, you form even further relationships. I don't know. I get very excited about the fact that a deal can happen anywhere, but it's the multiple touch points along the way that I never really even appreciated how many individual touch points two people can have in those 3-day time, and how much that advances, a
I,
relationship.
no, I agree with you 100% on that. And one of the things that I love about ITC is that it creates multiple layers of building the business relationships and the business opportunities. Now, usually I ask for the speaker to talk about, give a small, let's call it InsurTech 101, so he will define the term and explain it to the audience. I think that here is more about business development 101 of how do you actually build that relationship, create that deal flow or the lead generation.
So boy, that's a lot to sort of
I know. We can short it.
No. Eh, One thing that we try to do is, we invest a lot in technology to try and help surface connections or potential connections. I'll tell you, no surprise to you, but service providers and InsurTech startups, one of the first things they ask us, can I get the attendee list? Can I get the attendee list? And the answer is like, no, you can't get the attendee list. At the end of the day, is there 1,000, there's some number where 20 companies or 40 companies probably care about the same subset. And the last thing that we want is for those subset to get hit up by 40, 50, 60 people. And then all of a sudden the appetite to take that meeting is not there. So for us, it is a chance to, and that's why we're so bullish on the 15-minute one-to-ones, because it's enough time to get a feel for someone and to say, like, will I do it again later? Now, from a specific advice, there's really two of them. One is, it is insurance companies, right? Like I think about some of the ones that are the most advanced in the InsurTech industry. And I'd say, why? It's not scale, it's willingness. It's they have a process for articulating what the organization wants, what it needs, and they have a process for how do they test with new partners and new companies, and how do they help the organization see this as valuable. So I think that in some ways is kind of the foundation there, because without that, you could build the world's best relationship, but it won't move into production and change. So, when we think about the startups, you have to remember, these people, everyone's here, but everyone is also busy. What we don't like seeing is someone that spams, 100 people undifferentiatedly and just says, do you want to meet? Do you want to meet? But why? Why should we meet? So, part of what people have to do is just put in the time and the effort to imagine being on the other side and help paint that picture of, even like you said, I did some research. Well, imagine if you go into a conversation that says, hi, like, I think, you spend money on claims. I have a really cool tool. Let's talk. Versus, gee, I read this report. I actually heard this executive mention that this is one of their strategic priorities. Here's how I think we can help your strategic priority. Are you open to hearing a meeting of 15 minutes? And like, it's a lift more, but you'll get a better meeting because you want to know if you're actually kind of like compatible and able to work together. So I think part of the other thing too is kind of like, you sometimes have to start small. You have to either maybe ask a friend for an introduction, but don't come across too salesy. If you have a booth, like, help it tell your story, but don't stand there and be like, let me stare at your badge and try to pull you in by the lanyard here, if you will. Instead, it's kind of you don't want the used car lot. And I would say another thing that we recommend is, we love stories of did you know that this party went on, or this thing happened, and this dinner happened? And, so I do believe heavily in a mix of the during the typical conference hours and after hours. But part of it, again, is like you have to go out and try. But if someone doesn't know you, like if you and I had never met and you hadn't read about us, you didn't know who we were, if I invite you to like a sit down at dinner with 3 of my team and it's just you, probably going to be a fail. But, it's a different story if, you know what, we're going to host an interesting dinner. Maybe we'll have a speaker at this dinner. And, we try to think about who are other interesting people that should be there. Then if I invite you to something we're doing, it's not all of a sudden I'm sitting down at a table of 4 and I'm being like pitched all evening. It's another chance to learn more and catch up with people. And then I thank you for being thoughtful about my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I probably didn't, I don't even know if I answered your question, but hopefully there'll be, a startup out there or someone that is able to, sort of have better meetings as a result.
I'll tell you the truth. There is so much wisdom that came out from your mouth now that I was like trying to figure out later on in post-production I'm trying to capture sound bites and give all kinds of small snacks before the release of the episode, something that people will actually consume, because we don't have the attention span of 30 or 40 minutes to listen to an entire episode. So I was trying to think about, from that answer, how many sound bites can I take and just post them as like a 10-second or 30 seconds answer, this quote of wisdom that people will consume and go like, oh my God, Jay just said the thing that we need in order to move forward. And this is a compliment, right? It's that people think that I'm sarcastic, or it's because there are so many startups, especially at the beginning, that step on toes and doing things that are, how can I say that, incorrect or not part of the normal or the accepted culture of the business development. Let's call it, it's similar to dating. There will be just, let's do big numbers. So statistically, someone will say yes, versus actually putting the work, which has a certain ROI element to it, right? Putting the work, doing the research, and then reaching out to the right person. It's not simple, because doing that research, not everyone has access to the data, and even customizing it takes a long time and effort from that startup. So I think this is brilliant.
It's funny. It's not just startups. I realize as you were talking, I think about Milliman, and Milliman's been a fantastic supporter. I have to tell you, when I first started doing ITC, I had no idea. It's amazing the companies that you probably should know about when you get into an industry, and then you don't know about it. And then you realize later, like, wow, and same experience with AM Best when we started, or even the NAIC. And I'm like, I really should know these firms before we have gotten in here. But back to Milliman, they were sharing some of what they do in order to come to our event. And a lot of people think if I get up on stage, like that's all I need to do. And it is a piece that they care about. But even from the thoughtfulness of the stage, of like, how do we try to add value? But the level of connections where they try to look at who is out there, who do they know, who don't they know, who do they think, like what are the key messages that they want to share? But it's all with an eye towards a personal crafted message saying, here's why I think it makes sense to meet. And, this is why I think it would be worthwhile, hopefully, for you to do it. And you think about that and you go like, that's, I guess we knew people did that, but it's just, right. I think it makes them more successful. It makes a better experience for everyone who is, who is coming.
It's such a great sales pitch when someone is coming, okay, I know all this information, but it's behind it, right? Their message to you is, here's the reason why we should meet. It's a great crafted sales pitch, but behind it, there is so much data and effort that was invested in order to give that message, which creates
them, right? It's not, here's how great we are. And it's amazing how many big companies you still have to, you sort of like, No, you don't go out saying how great you are. Right? People don't pick it just because you're great. How many times can you name? A lot, where the best product doesn't win, right? It's the trust that they're there for you and they understand you and they're going to be there for you, right? They pick you because they pick, like you pick a vendor or a partner because it solves your problem. So I don't care how great you are. What I really care is that you get what I need. And then we can talk about how great you are. But that's, again, that's just me, obviously, but
It's
hopefully
not
not.
just you. No, it's not just you. It's everyone. And this is where they have the big chasm that startups, or actually everyone, needs to know how to jump, which usually it's by the first believer of a vision. Because unless you have the track record, the traction, or selling, the use case, it's just a vision and a dream that cannot really be backed by numbers. And it goes back to when I want to sell you something which is successful, I will give you detailed and focus or description. The more, let's call it a lemon, it will be vague description. It's called cheap talk. It's part of financial models, blah, blah, blah. I can send you articles about it. But at the end of the day, you have mathematical models that already proven that the lower the value is, the vaguer the description is. The higher the value, it will, or what you perceive as a better value, then the details will be crisp and super focused. And it's the same thing that we see also between what people sell in their approach and the message. Or
We've always had a great respect for New York Life, ventures, and and a reason is that they've tried to make it they've really tried to say, okay, for our internal organization, how do you speak startup? And for startups, how do you speak insurance? And when I think to the startups, part of what I think we have to remember is that insurance, and especially selling to insurance companies, can be a very long sales cycle. It's different if you sell to marketing and marketing tools, they can be quicker. But if you are going to plug in somewhere that right touches anything that touches everything, it's not just overnight. And so the hard part is that it's also back to the trust thing, which is insurance. Many insurance companies have been around hundreds of years. Certainly at least 100 years is not considered ancient or impossible for insurance. So for them, it's, there's a sense of, I need to know that you're going to be here the next time and the next year. So for many startups, what's really key is it's the runway. I don't want you going into, whether it's ITC or any conversation with boy, we got to get this done now. We got to get this done now, because that's a turnoff versus we're here. And, oh, you know what? I remember seeing them last year. Oh, I remember seeing them mentioned on LinkedIn or on a news article, or it's building that multiple points that validate them as a company, and the time that says, they're going to be here and we can trust them. So when I think back to what do startups need to know about business development, it's that it's focus on the development. It doesn't, the skyscrapers aren't built overnight. It's a foundation that you layer on time over and over and over, and you do that enough, and you have something, like what happened with Hover, where year one, it's one of my favorite stories. Year one, Hover meets AmFam. That was and they get their first institutional investment. Year two, great story, because Travelers was almost ready to pack up, and they had a meeting on the books with Hover. They stayed around, and they both had that meeting. Fast forward 2 more years, the head of claims for Travelers is on our stage, effectively saying how their policyholders have been improved by the adoption of Hover. But that's a 4-year cycle. And that is the exact kind of thing you want to have happen, but that's not overnight, unfortunately, but also fortunately, because the value that was created all around is what really matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And being part of that cycle and now helping companies to go through the cycle, more of an advisor than, and putting in the kind word and making hot connections. It's development that people don't understand, especially folks. And I talk with a lot of founders that coming from and mainly from outside of the industry that think that, okay, it's just a SaaS process. I can wrap it up in 6 months, 12 months. And I think that you basically just nail it on the head. This business development and relationship building can take not just the 18 months to go through all the approvals and creating a pilot or whatever that may be and reaching the commercial contract. It can take 2, 3, 4 years. So it will be a success. So it will cut on. Unless, of course, they are taking a different path, which we can use the Hippo, Next, Lemonade route, an example, and all the other IPO, pre-IPO companies that have done great. But those guys, they are the linchpins, right? They are something completely.
It's still not overnight. If you think about, we had Daniel Schreiber on our stage in 2016, and pretty well known even then, as the sort of the disruptor. But 2016, it was still 4 years later, and that's super fast. But once again, it's these things look like rocket ships, but when you watch the launch of a rocket, we think about how high it gets and how far it gets, but right, it takes a lot of effort to sort of break free of that gravity, and it's not super fast.
No, that takes decades. And don't forget what happens when you try to make the rocket land. But that's a Elon Musk kind of story.
Yeah, I'm glad he's there for these really difficult problems. Yeah, I'm amazed. We've stayed on topic pretty well, actually. I've given some good answers, long answers, but we've stayed on topic. So I'm impressed.
No, that's good, because I can tell you that with Jeremy Bluvol, I hope I didn't just butcher his last name, the CEO of Anagram, great guy. We just, I think that next week we're going to release that episode. We had like 10 minutes just talking about space, but it's not going to be in the episode because we were just all over the place. But it was interesting because at that time you had the Chinese coming back with rocks that they collected on the moon, and it's the first one since decades that collected rocks. So from there it can go anywhere else.
It's amazing. Even talking about rocket ships, and when I talk to people about insurance, and they sort of you try to convince them about insurance can be cool and interesting, because sometimes not everyone is I'd say is tuned in like our industry is. So when you talk to someone who may not be, you look at that. Even Elon Musk, right? Very fascinating. The rocket ships side of it, the autonomous vehicle side of it. Without insurance, none of this happens, right? SpaceX, right? There has to be insurance for all of the innovation to take place. So these are times when I feel like we have to remind ourselves that insurance is fundamental to some of the, not just the things that we can take for granted every day, like getting in a car and going somewhere, but, to literally going someplace that's gone before.
Well, with Elon Musk and Tesla, and especially once they, go forward with the insurance and the liability, the software and all that stuff, he has such a great advantage over most of the other companies because they had crashes with Tesla. So they have data that other companies don't have, which is what caused a Tesla to crash.
Yeah, all good points. And it reinforces, sort of, I think, for all of us to think about data and, not just to think, what, we have already all the data that we can handle. We have all these years of data, that's enough. And, I think it also shows that, the power of both, new data and, technologies like machine learning, and sort of that if there aren't, some initiatives internally, if right, I think there's a point we're probably approaching it that if an insurer can't turn around somewhere internally and say, okay, how are we thinking about using machine learning, or how is it going to help us? And if the answer is we're not, right, I think we know that's the wrong answer. We probably can't tell you exactly what you should use it for because that's case by case. But if a company says we're not thinking about it whatsoever, right, yeah, we can say wrong. That's a wrong answer.
Now, going back to insurance, trying to go back to insurance,
yes.
I completely agree with you that insurance or InsurTech is interesting. And I saw the same phenomena. Every time that, going out to a party or other social event, once you start to talk about insurance, or to be precise on InsurTech and the evolution of that, everyone is like, there is like aha moment. And then the rest of the conversation is about insurance. Because everyone has insurance and they have their horror stories or just meh stories. And then they're also fascinated about how things are going to change. And they are trying to contribute their ideas. And it's such an interesting phenomena to see that more and more people actually care about it, about the thing that for most of us is just going to the dentist. I'm paying my premium. Hopefully my tooth will not ache. So I don't need to go and see them because that's a claim.
Well, I will add on to that and say one thing, of many about insurance and today, and I'm very proud that you see it from the regulators. I don't know if it's on down or regulators on up or sideways, but you see that everyone has a belief that technology is going to make it better and a desire to say how. And that probably is, right? That's the primordial soup even for us to exist, is that, consumers have long had these ideas of like, well, why can't I apply on my phone? And why can't it be issued instantaneously? Or how come I can't just take a picture of it? And either that's picture is used for assessing the value for my own coverage or helping with a claim. And like, there's all of these like, how comes? And like, all of a sudden now you have people like, that's happening. That's happening. They're doing that. Saw that commercial? That's what that is. That to me is what's so cool, is that gap between why doesn't it do this, I think, and what it does. I think prior to 2015, 16, let's think about the 2000s. I think it was like the gap is big. And what's kind of cool is, the best companies, right? They surprise us. They delight us. They offer us things that we didn't ask for. And then once we have it, go, wow. And that was never insurance's way of thinking. But I think more and more, right, we have companies that actually do that. Another of my stories here is back to, Hippo. I remember being at a different conference and seeing these, I think it was like a key machine or a locksmith or something. And I think I texted Assaf and I was like, oh, man, you know what? You should offer your policyholders this service. And partner with them, because boy, that would make it like, if I'm a homeowner, like that would help me. And I think the answer was, yeah, we actually, we do. We work with them. We've been doing it for, like 6 months now or something. And, again, but it's like offering those things that go beyond just the basic pay premium, get coverage to, wow. Like, I didn't think of that. And I'm really glad that I have it. And I thank you for it.
Yeah, I think that if we are in the spirit of giving thanks and credit to people, let's talk more about Assaf and just give him credit. I think that he's such a great guy. I think he made the introduction to my lawyers back in the day, and when I started Bound, I reached out to him to see what he thinks, and he was like, "It's very interesting. It has an opportunity, but how about you just create this type of a product?" And he's one of the smartest, sharpest, such a nice guy out there. Now let's start closing this down because we can continue talking for like hours. So I'll have 3 more questions for you, which are pretty quick. Okay. If I'm an insurance company, which other companies should I know of? You mentioned about that lack of knowledge or familiarity with Millman or AIM Best, which people know. Who is like, a secret gem, which is not secret? They are a big company, but no one is aware of.
Oh, well, this is one of those where, let me go pull up the list, because, and at the risk of offending the people that I don't, sort of mentioned, I will cleverly avoid, the answer.
Okay, let me rephrase so you don't need to name names.
What I will say is we at ITC are happy to help. We love seeing the connections being made. So more than, the company, I think I have the number of times where I've done this and I've, found a way to mention Bold Penguin, there's, or Hippo, right? There's kind of, I suspect is more than I even know. But so what I think about is more important than a specific company. It's a mindset of an insurer to say, we know what our problem is first. So, don't fall into the trap that tech's going to magically solve it.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to define your outcomes and what you're hoping to achieve. And then you can evaluate companies better based on that. But it is the best tech that's out there. It's still a tool. I remember I sat on a demo of Unqork, another company that, I had been very bullish on for a long time. And, now after raising hundreds of millions of dollars, they are really well known. But, if you ask them, like you look at that demo and it's really powerful stuff. It gets your mind going, but it doesn't matter unless you know that you have a problem that it can help you solve. So otherwise, it becomes that thing that sits on the shelf that is really good, and that you should be using it, but why? What do you do?
Yeah, then there will be a question. Of course, there are always follow-up questions. It's like, which companies can actually help you to know what you want to achieve? Because again, there is and I think it was Rumsfeld that said that, now we know what we didn't know that we haven't known, that we know that we didn't know that we haven't known, and at the end of the day, sometimes there is that gap of even knowing what is the next step and what they are supposed to achieve. And then once that part is defined, then they can go and say, okay, which company can solve us? And that will link to my conversation with Brian Gaab, which is, hey, what's the decision? Is it build, buy, or partner? But that can be a whole topic. So
yeah. I think what I will say, because I sometimes get really fired up about this, is
Brian Gaab. Oh,
I think I have said it wrong all the years, and I can spell it, Gaab, but I'm sure I would have said Gaab too. So, on the subject here, if there's a company that I've talked to just as a friend, because they're nice people, and it's a company called Neurometrics. And what's so interesting is that I think many companies struggle with this thing that we've done can apply in so many different ways. How do I narrow it down to the one or two use cases? And when is the right time for that use case to matter? In their case, they do a lot around classification. So, you think about the amount of time that underwriters spend, trying to look up a business and then classify it. And wouldn't it be nice if there was something that can help you do that, sort of like quickly and automatically? Or you're going to renew your book, do you want to make sure that things aren't improperly classified? Because, if you have something that is improperly classified, right, it's a big risk, sort of like for you. And I think some of their challenge has been, well, there is a technology, but is it a service business? Is it something like that's what we should be selling it as, kind of like a service? They know they're not Planck, where Planck is very much an API, like you think about, and I have to give a shout out to the Planck guys, but, so it's sort of but is that problem too small, too narrow? You think about things that have been confounding since day one, the whole single entry, multiple submission, like you would have thought that by now, like that would be solved. And yet for a number of reasons, there are these problems that are just, I wouldn't say unsolvable, but as our team likes to talk about, the juice is, not worth the squeeze. Like you literally, yes, it makes sense that it's broken, but you're probably not gonna to fix it. So all of that was a long way of saying that, for the insurers, my recommendation is, learn to test, not in addition to thinking about problems you won't solve, break it down into solvable steps, and don't be afraid to test a company that may not be around in the future, because the ability to test is so valuable. The learnings that you get faster are valuable. That if your mindset is we have to pick a partner who's going to be, and we're only going to start with projects that are 10 years in length, you're not going to make any progress, really.
So here are the last two questions for this amazing conversation, because we need to have more conversations.
By the way, you have an Under Armour shirt. So what's the is it pardon the interruption? What's the one where they have the timer, and you get this much time to answer, and then it's like, so I've my team, so I've got Jess. Turns out Jessica Levin on our team has 6 Emmys and has worked at some of the best known shows. So, she will be watching this, and I can guarantee you, I'm going to get a message that says, I watched the whole thing. You had too many long answers. You took too much time to answer the question. So,
Oh, and then we need to talk about lights, microphone, connectivity, the asymmetric structure. Your head needs to be a little bit to the left. And Jess, I'm sorry, my right shoulder, I broke it in martial arts, so that's what it is. But the last questions. So actually people go like, oh my God, is this the Joe Rogan? Can we actually finish this conversation? I like his show, but that's a different story. COVID, quarantine. So number one will be, what's your life hacks and how you've been dealing with it? Kids, work. Let's talk about family, not work. And the other one, can you recommend a book?
absolutely. So, on the thinking of the positive side, I will say that for me, I always thought that I put family first, and I've always thought that I spent a good amount of time with my kids. Clearly, I know what it really means now to put family first and spend a lot of time with kids. But I think the fact that my daughter, I have 2 kids, they're both 7, and my daughter is known to make a lot of appearances on our calls, and so like the fact that she has that comfort level of like, I can come see daddy, like what she will now learn about work, and that it can be like, it's not this scary thing. It's not this thing that's like, and that the fact that others are really nice. I love that. And I love the time that we get, sort of together. So there's so many great memories that we never would have had otherwise. So that for me is find those memories that you wouldn't have had otherwise, that you can look back on and say, they make you smile, like they make you smile. And then for books, I have a go-to book that I've read about a third of, but I've always recommended it. And, it was Crucial Conversations. And, the problem is when people say book, what do they really want, right? They want this like life-changing book.
No.
I read a bunch of fiction. At the end of the day, we actually, Phil Friedman, who we had and my other buddy, Hagai, I just read a bunch of fiction. So most of my stuff are these series that are all about escaping, the day versus, the number of times when people go, have you read this book? Like it's changed my life.
No, the fiction is great. I'm a big audiobooks person. So I just finished listening to Ready Player 2, which is the sequel of Ready Player 1.
Interesting.
The one which was surprisingly very, very good. I was usually it's so hard, to do a great sequel, especially after the second book, Armada, was like, when you see that the guy's like stuck in the 80s. But kudos to him, he's done a great job. And now I'm actually listening.
What is it? It's like A Stranger in a Strange Land. I guess a lot of tech people read it because it coined the term grok, came out of this book. And, and I'm 34% on the way through it, and it's taken me 6 months, and I just can't get there. But I will say, inspired by, nothing to do with the book, but inspired by your very holiday attire, my now not so secret indulgence during this time of year is Hallmark movies. So my wife and I consume a ton of Hallmark movies, and I will say, like, they've been getting really good. Kudos to Hallmark on that. Although it used to be, without fail, 17 minutes in, that's when the first commercial break would be. And I could time my like things around that. But now it's like 22 minutes. So I never know if it's 17 or 22 minutes for the first commercial break. Then they just throw them in there like bam, 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 bam. But usually what happens, right? There's a story arc. And in the movies that they made in around like 2016, 17, 18, it was always the second to last scene where the things were like resolved. And that was usually 45 minutes into the second hour, 45, 46 minutes. Like you knew, like all the drama magically solved like that. But now it's like 51 or 52, and they're really dragging out the tension here. You know, you're like, oh man, how are they going to wind this up in the next like 3 minutes?
So if we are talking about TV, my recommendation is False Flag, and you can see that on Hulu. It's an Israeli show. It's from 2015, and then the second season is from 2018 or something like that. Amazing, seriously. And the funny part of it, especially when I say Israeli shows, you see that it's almost no budget, so the script needs to be very good, and it's everything on location. So it's like it's someone's house. It's not like a set or something like that. And the opening scene is such a classic Israeli house. All the noise, especially you have a 7-year-old daughter, and so it's all the noise that goes with it. It's such, yeah, it just made me go like, I'm so happy I'm here. No, just kidding.
All right. Well, the next time we're together, like you'll bring, and next time that it's safe to hang out, right? I will gladly accept your babka, and we'll put it on, and you can sort of help me appreciate the, sort of the genius of it, because sometimes it is. Sometimes it's better watching with someone who can point out why it's so good.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I will not dive to the details. Because there are so many nuances, especially, nuances of TVs and productions and all the PC that goes with that. That's a different conversation, better to be offline. But again, Jay, thank you very, 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 very much for joining me today, dedicating so much time that later on we need to figure out how we're going to chop it down so people can consume it easily.
That's right. We're going to have episode 1 of like a 30-part series. We've dedicated episode 10 to the first part of the answer of the third section of his question. Absolutely. Well, I'll say, Gilad, I mean, it's like I think you're a fantastic person. Again, like do what this do. You think about the people, right? That's what we always remember, the relationships that we've made. Near and dear to me. I'd say my family, but my daughter, I told her she's not allowed to make an appearance. So maybe for next time. And to anyone, that's out there, I have to always say thank you to you two, right? Because of the hard work, the innovation, that's how we have a chance to exist. And, if we had time, I'd go probably take I don't know if it's 15,000 unique names that have been to ITC over the years, but sometime I'll read off every single one and say thank you to you because you've given us a purpose and you've given us a way to help.
Jay, Merry Christmas, Chanukah Sameach. Have an amazing 2021.
And we forgot the Prospero Año Nuevo. So absolutely happy holidays. Even if I'm accused by you of being lazy for saying that. Happy holidays.